Chapter 2058. Ji Yaoxue faced Shen Huang without the slightest bit of fear in her eyes as she said in a deep voice, "Back then, Nianqi Shen Huang of the Protoss knelt in the corpse of a god in the god-slaying canyon and swore that he would never step foot into Tianhuang mainland in his lifetime to complete redemption for himself and the Protoss. Why did you disregard the oath that Nianqi Shen Huang swore and invade Tianhuang mainland again after becoming the new emperor?" When they heard that, everyone from Tianhuang mainland broke out in cold sweat for Ji Yaoxue. At that moment, everyone was intimidated by Shen Huang's power. Even the emperors of Tianhuang mainland did not dare to look Shen Huang in the eye, let alone question him loudly, let alone ordinary cultivators. It was a reverence that came from the depths of their bloodlines and souls. Everyone could not control themselves at all. Nobody knew how a void reversion like Ji Yaoxue could possess such courage. This was an existence that was countless times more terrifying than Lo Lo. If Shen Huang were to attack, nobody would be able to defend against him. Perhaps because he could not be bothered to attack a void reversion, Shen Huang merely smiled indifferently. "The oath that Nianqi swore has nothing to do with me. No living being or race is worthy of the Protoss's worship, let alone two corpses. The god mainland has failed to invade Tianhuang mainland twice. That is the eternal regret of the Protoss. The reason why I'm here today is to make up for that regret." Shen Huang looked at Ji Yaoxue with his deep blue eyes and said slowly, "Nianqi is a weakling. Only weaklings will back down. As for me, I like to crush everything and kill anyone who resists without mercy." Although Shen Huang was speaking with a smile, everyone could sense the shuddering, killing intent behind Shen Huang's smile. The battlefield was silent. Nobody dared to act rashly or speak casually. Lo Lo looked at the people of Heaven Wasteland Domain with a mocking expression and shook his head. "I told you, you don't have to resist. With the power that Shen Huang now possesses, no person or realm can resist it. Let alone Wu Huang, even if Monk Daming, Blood Demon Dao Lord, and Wu Huang from Wu Huang's era work together, they wouldn't be a match for Shen Huang." Hearing this, little Fatty suddenly laughed. "So, Lo Lo chose to submit to the godly continent, not because of the title Wu Huang, but because you knew that you were no match for Shen Huang." Little Fatty had a mocking expression on his face as he sneered, "You're afraid, so you chose to submit to the Protoss." "It's nothing." Shen Huang smiled, patted Lo Lo on the shoulder, and said, "Choosing to submit to the strong is a wise move. If you stubbornly resist, you will only become a corpse at my feet." Lo Lo lowered his head slightly to show his obedience. "So, you will never be worthy of the title Wu Huang." Ji Yaoxue looked coldly at Lo Lo and suddenly said, "What did you say?" Lo Lo's face darkened. Ji Yaoxue sneered. "No matter how strong the opponent is, Wu Huang will stand up and protect Heaven Wasteland Domain. But you chose to submit and live. Not only do you not deserve the title Wu Huang, you don't even deserve to cultivate Wu Dao." Lo Lo's face was gloomy to the extreme. Ji Yaoxue's words poked at his sore spot. His greatest goal since he started cultivating was to surpass Wu Huang, but he had never been able to gain the recognition of the emperors of Heaven Wasteland Domain. "Wu Huang?" Lo Lo clenched his fists slightly and gritted his teeth. Wu Huang back then had already ascended. "In this life I am Wu Huang. In the future I will make a name for myself." "Who will admit it?" Ji Yaoxue asked with a mocking expression. "You won't admit it?" Lo Lo laughed. "From today onwards, I will rule over all races and become the only master of Heaven Wasteland Domain. I will destroy all the ancient books that record Araki Takashi. The two words Araki Takashi are taboo in Heaven Wasteland Domain. I will kill anyone who dares to mention it. Araki Takashi has already ascended. As time passes by, there will be fewer and fewer people who know about him. If 10,000 years won't do, 20,000 or even 50,000 years will do. I have enough patience. One day, every living being in Heaven Wasteland Domain will think that I was the one who created Wu Dao and that I am the eternal Wu Huang." Lo Lo's expression was deranged and he looked like he was possessed. "Dream on," Ji Yaoxue said coldly. Lo Lo glared at Wu Huangling in Ji Yaoxue's hands and said coldly, Do you think that you can replace Araki Takashi with a lousy badge? Today, I'm going to destroy this badge. The moment he said that, Lo reached out and grabbed Wu Huangling through the void. Caught off guard, Ji Yaoshue's palm was cut a few times by the Wu Huangling and was dripping with blood. Lo gripped Wu Huangling and glared at the words Araki Takashi on it. Enraged, he exerted strength in his palm and squeezed. Lo felt a sharp pain in his palm and he could not squeeze it. Immediately after, a change happened. Suddenly, a terrifying aura burst forth from Wu Huangling and condensed into a figure in midair. He had black hair and green robes with delicate features. He was no different from Araki Takashi, the eternal Wu Huangling. Everyone exclaimed and were invigorated. Araki Takashi's gaze was cold as he punched Lo who was in front of him. That punch was filled with the aura of death and a massive might descended. Although Lo had comprehended the 6 supreme mystic powers, he could not move or resist at that moment. All of a sudden, a golden light appeared beside him and Shen Huang suddenly appeared in front of Lo. The blood chi in his body surged and he threw a punch at Wu Huang who was in midair. Boom! The two fists collided and there was a violent explosion. Heaven and earth shook. The figure of Wu Huang in midair gradually dissipated. Streaks of blood appeared on Shen Huang's face and his skin was torn. He was almost blown up by that punch. The crown on his head flowed with a milky white brilliance. The wounds on Shen Huang's body healed in the blink of an eye. It's just a phantom formed by a will, Shen Huang said indifferently and threw Wu Huangling on the ground casually. Lo felt a lingering fear when he saw that. The punch just now had almost shattered the Celestial Emperor's body. If it had landed on him, he would have died without a doubt. Bitch, you destroyed me. Lo snapped back to his senses and was enraged. He glared at Ji Yaoshue with a menacing expression and walked towards her slowly with a murderous aura. Everyone from Tianhuang mainland was shocked. Everyone could tell that Lo was filled with killing intent. At that moment, the emperors of Tianhuang mainland were injured by Shen Huang and none of them could defend against Lo's attack. Ji Yaoshue merely sneered without fear. She seemed to be mocking that a phantom of Wu Huang's will almost killed Lo. Seeing Ji Yaoshue's smile, Lo was even more furious. What are you laughing at? Lo's expression was cold and he suddenly let out a deep laugh. I know who you are. You were once Araki Takashi's confidant. You're just a pitiful person. So what if you can't forget him? It's just your wishful thinking. Desolate Marshal has already ascended a long time ago and has forgotten about you completely. Today is the day you die. Who can save you? Where is Araki Takashi? As he spoke, Lo had already arrived in front of Ji Yaoshue and was ready to attack. Do you want to see me? Right then, a voice suddenly sounded behind Ji Yaoshue. It was neither loud nor soft and was calm. Chapter 2059. That voice. Ji Yaoshue shuddered and her heart seemed to have stopped beating. Was that him? How could that be? Ji Yaoshue could no longer hear any other sounds beside her ears except for those few words. Do you want to see me? That voice was so real, as though it was whispering beside her ears. However, the more that was the case, the more Ji Yaoshue could not believe it. In fact, she did not even dare to turn back to look. However, her body was trembling slightly and her eyes were gradually moistening. Some of the older people of Tianhuang mainland such as the Cloud Dragon Emperor and Little Fatty were slightly stunned as well. Although more than 2,000 years had passed, that voice sounded familiar. It was as though, when Lo heard that, he could not help but frown with a bewildered expression. Of course, he had not heard that voice before. However, this sentence sounded a little strange. Do you want to see me? Instinctively, Lo recalled what he had said just now. His last sentence seemed to be asking where Araki Takashi was. Could it be? The thought flashed through Lo's mind. However, he immediately rejected it decisively. Impossible. More than 2,000 years ago, Araki Takashi ascended to the upper world under the watchful eyes of the living beings of the 10,000 races. How could he appear here? There were extremely cruel laws of heaven and earth between the lower and upper worlds. There was no way anyone from the upper world could enter the billions of small worlds below casually. That voice definitely did not belong to Araki Takashi. Those thoughts flashed through his mind in the blink of an eye. Right then, a pitch-black hole appeared in the void behind Ji Yaoshue. Thereafter, it expanded gradually and a figure walked out. The moment this figure stepped foot on Tianhuang mainland, there was complete silence. Whether it was time or space, everything seemed to have come to a standstill at this moment. Everyone from Tianhuang mainland widened their eyes and looked at that figure in disbelief as though they were looking at a god. The Cloud Dragon Emperor, Little Fatty, and the others were even more agitated and opened their mouths, as though they wanted to shout. But with their minds in turmoil, everyone was unable to say a single word for a moment. The moment Lo saw this person, his face turned pale and he subconsciously took half a step back. Unknowingly, beads of sweat began to seep out of his forehead and slowly slide down. Shenhuang's deep blue eyes turned slightly and landed on this figure. His expression gradually became serious. This figure was wearing a purple robe. His black hair was casually scattered behind his back. His face was handsome and his eyes were clear. There was nothing special about him. However, the Divine Emperor felt an incomparably terrifying aura from this person's body. This person's body seemed to be nurturing a giant volcano that could erupt at any time. He had never met Wangu Wu Huang before. But when he saw the expressions of the people of Heaven Wasteland Domain, he had already vaguely guessed the identity of the visitor. Shenhuang's heart shuddered slightly before he quickly calmed his thoughts. Ji Yaoshue noticed the change in the expressions of the people around her, but she still did not dare to look back. She was afraid that everything she saw was an illusion that would be shattered in an instant. All of a sudden, Ji Yaoshue felt a warmth on her injured and cold palm. The person behind her came to her side and held her hand gently. "You're injured," the person said softly. Ji Yaoshue only felt a warmth in her palm. She lowered her head and saw that the wound on her palm had healed in the blink of an eye without a single scar left. Ji Yaoshue raised her head and finally saw that familiar face with clear eyes. That was the person who had appeared in her dreams countless times. "Zimo," Ji Yaoshue called out softly. Instantly, tears rolled down her cheeks. Actually, just now, Lo's words had indeed pierced Ji Yaoshue's heart. At that moment, she was truly disheartened. She also thought that Lo was right. She was just a pitiful person. If she died, so be it. No one would care. As though he could read Ji Yaoshue's thoughts, Su Zimo said softly, "I didn't leave. I've always been accompanying you in Tianhuang mainland." Ji Yaoshue's heart skipped a beat as many images flashed through her mind. All these years, Momo would bring along many rare treasures each time she visited her. In fact, Momo would find many unheard-of treasures that did not belong to this world and would give them to her so that she could extend her lifespan and improve her cultivation. Suddenly, she understood that those treasures were all found by Su Zimo. She also understood that there was someone in this world who cared about her. That person had even stayed in Tianhuang mainland for more than 2,000 years for her, protecting her silently and never giving up on extending her lifespan. Ji Yaoshue's eyes glowed once more, and she became dazzling all over. "Wu Huang! Wu Huang is back! Greetings, Wu Huang!" The silence of the crowd of Tianhuang mainland was finally broken as a series of cheers burst forth. The living beings of the 10,000 races were agitated and the blood of all the martial artists in the world burned with bloodshot eyes. One after another, rows after rows of living beings knelt down and bowed towards Wu Dao's true body. Everyone in Tianhuang mainland was suppressed by Shenhuang's brutal methods and terrifying strength to the point of suffocation. Just as they were left with despair, Wu Huang returned. Seeing this figure, the fear in the hearts of the people of Infinite Wasteland Domain instantly vanished. Everyone knew that Tianhuang mainland would not be destroyed as long as Wu Huang was around. "Wu Huang!" Shenhuang murmured softly and glared at Su Zimo fixedly. There was no fear in his eyes and instead, there was a hint of fighting spirit. He was confident that even if Wu Huang returned, he would be able to kill the latter. Out of the protection of the billions of small worlds, the lower realm naturally had its own unique heaven and earth laws. No matter how high Wu Huang's cultivation realm was, the combat strength he could release in this small world could not exceed a certain limit. Otherwise, he would definitely suffer a backlash from the heaven and earth laws and be killed. Back then, the eternal human emperor's cultivation realm was unparalleled. After ascending to the upper realm hundreds of thousands of years ago, his cultivation realm fell continuously when he returned to the lower realm. Shen Huang was confident that his combat strength had already reached the peak of the billions of small worlds. In the lower realm, no one could defeat him. Shen Huang's gaze was filled with fighting spirit and provocation. However, right from the beginning, Su Zimo had not looked at him at all. It was as though he was someone dispensable in Su Zimo's eyes and could be ignored. Shen Huang's expression was terrible. This was an immense humiliation for him. Su Zimo turned around and looked at Lo Lo, who was not far away. Under this gaze, Luo Ao only felt that all the secrets on his body could no longer be hidden. In his heart, he wanted to rid himself of his fear towards Wu Huang. He had comprehended 6 supreme divine powers and cultivated both immortal and martial arts. His combat strength was comparable to the human emperor's, and he was definitely not as weak as this. However, after Su Zimo returned, he could not say a single word. It was as though an invisible aura was pressing down on his chest, and even breathing became extremely difficult. The existence of Wu Dao's true body had far surpassed Lo Lo's understanding. Chapter 2060. You were the one who injured Yao Xue's hand? Su Zimo asked softly with a calm expression. I. Lo Lo's body began to tremble uncontrollably as he opened his mouth slightly, as though he wanted to explain something. Yes or no? Su Zimo looked at Lo Lo with a torch-like gaze and asked slowly. These 4 words, each word, seemed to have the power to pound Luo Ao's chest with 10,000 pounds of force. Luo Ao wanted to remain silent, to explain, and to lie. However, he could not defend himself against Su Zimo's gaze and could not control himself at all. Opening his mouth slightly, he spat out a single word. Yes, you can die now then, Su Zimo said indifferently. As soon as he said that, streams of scarlet light burst out from Luo Ao's body, bursting out of his body. Shen Huang's heart skipped a beat. Earlier on, he was already fully focused and prepared to save Lo Lo at any moment. However, before he could see any signs of Su Zimo attacking, Lo Lo was already on the brink of death. What sort of technique was that? There were no dermic arts, spirit consciousness fluctuations, power of divine powers, visual techniques, or sound domain secret skills. A single sentence from the martial dominator was enough to cause such a terrifying scene to appear on Luo Ao's body. With a pained expression, Lo Lo let out a tragic cry and channeled his spirit consciousness wildly, releasing supreme divine powers one after another. 3 heads, 6 arms. Endless vitality. God nation in palm. Even his primordial spirit could no longer endure the burden after unleashing 3 exceptional skills in an instant. Tiny cracks began to appear on his primordial spirit. However, Lo Lo could not be bothered anymore. The pain on his essence spirit was not even 1,000th of the pain in his body. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Lo Lo's body, which was originally filled with streaks of red light, began to glow. However, after he unleashed the 3 peerless divine abilities, the red light became even brighter as if it had been replenished. The red light had rapidly transformed into a scarlet flame. This was karmic fire. Karmic fire was not a divine art. It was born from karma, but it could burn divine arts. Back then, Wu Dao's original body had comprehended the red lotus karmic fire in the Kunlun ruins. That was why he was able to refine countless divine abilities and improve his cultivation. Lo Lo's entire life was plagued by bad karma. With just a thought from Su Zimo, endless karmic fire would ignite in his body. Lo Lo didn't react in time, and Shen Huang didn't notice it either. This was because Su Zimo did not use any Dharma incantation, nor did he activate his divine sense, nor did he release any secret techniques. With a single thought, the karmic fire burned his body. If Lo Lo did not activate his divine powers, he might not have attracted such a ferocious karmic fire. The power of divine powers could not suppress the karmic fire at all. It would only cause it to burn even more fiercely. Even though it was endless and surged with endless vitality, it was difficult to extinguish the karmic fire. Endless vitality was also a divine power. Divine powers were no match for karmic fire. Luo Ao's mouth was wide open. His facial features were twisted, and his expression was ferocious. The karmic fire burning on his body burned his hair, skin, flesh, bones, organs, and essence until they were bright red. Right in front of everyone, Lo Lo's body was completely engulfed by the karmic fire. Before long, the karmic fire gradually extinguished. Lo Lo's figure had already vanished, leaving behind a gigantic demonic red lotus on the ground. The entire process was long and took less than 10 breaths. Lo Lo was incinerated by the karmic fire, and even his essence spirit could not escape. In the end, only a red lotus mark was left on the ground. Seeing this scene, the people of Heaven Wasteland Domain were finally able to vent their anger. As for the Protoss camp, it was silent. Initially, they had made a comeback with a domineering aura and were prepared to crush Tianhuang mainland in one go. Their cavalry would crush and slaughter wantonly. But now, seeing such a method, every member of the God clan could not help but feel a tinge of apprehension and fear. Clap, clap. Suddenly, Shenhuang clapped his hands gently and praised with a smile, "What a great method." Upon hearing that, many Protoss were shocked. Fortunately, there were still God Emperors in front of them. Su Zimo's gaze shifted and he looked at the corpses that were strewn all over Kunlun ruins. He looked at the scarlet river of blood that was still warm in the God-slaying canyon and the millions of living beings that were killed by Shenhuang in 3 steps between the two armies. In less than a day, nearly 10 million living beings were buried in Kunlun ruins forever. If he had not returned in time, even more living beings on Tianhuang mainland would have died. A hint of sorrow and killing intent flashed through the depths of Su Zimo's eyes. He turned his head slightly and looked at Shenhuang for the first time. That gaze did not have any deterrence. It was calm and clear like water. However, for some reason, the moment that gaze looked over, Shenhuang felt his hair stand on end and his scalp tingle. He finally experienced the indescribable fear and irresistible pressure that Lo Lo felt when he faced Su Zimo. The blood debt of the millions of living beings on Tianhuang mainland will be on your head. Su Zimo glanced at Shenhuang indifferently. "You can die too." The moment he said that, scarlet flames surged from Shenhuang's body as well. "Ah!" Shenhuang shrieked in pain with a tragic expression. He finally felt the pain of Lo Lo before his death. It was as though there were billions of ants gnawing on his flesh, bones and organs. Instantly, Shenhuang fell into a frenzy and scratched his body wildly. Wherever his fingertips passed, bloody marks appeared and divine blood gushed out. The golden divine blood contained an incomparably powerful power. However, it could not extinguish the karmic fire and only obstructed its burning slightly. Shenhuang regained a brief moment of clarity. He did not dare to use his divine powers and channeled his spirit consciousness into the golden crown on his head. Swoosh! Around the golden crown, 8 sparkling and translucent gems were embedded. At that moment, a milky white luster surged from the gems. It was sacred and flawless as it scattered from the top of his head like a waterfall, washing Shenhuang's body. Buzz! 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 The karmic fire in Shenhuang's body let out a sizzling sound under the envelopment of the milky white luster and gradually extinguished. Shenhuang panted heavily after escaping death. Although the karmic fire was extinguished, his flesh, organs and bones were still injured by the karmic fire and were burned bright red. Shenhuang's skin had already cracked and demonic red lotuses bloomed one after another. It was fortunate that he had the god's crown. Otherwise, he would have died without a doubt. "Oh!" Su Zimo raised his brow slightly. Wu Dao's furnace smelted all dermic divine powers. The milky white luster that surged from the god's crown was a power that he had never seen before. That power could extinguish the karmic fire. The divine blood in Shenhuang's body surged. With the help of the god's crown, his injuries healed in the blink of an eye. Fufu! When he saw that the god's crown could suppress the karmic fire, Shen Huang roared with laughter and regained his confidence. Ancient Wu Huang is nothing much. Is that so? Su Zimo's expression was indifferent. He held Ji Yaoshue's hand and walked slowly toward Shen Huang. Be careful. Don't bring me along, Ji Yaoshue said softly. She was a little worried about Su Zimo and wanted Su Zimo to let go of his hand and fight with all his might. It's fine. Su Zimo smiled. He was still holding Ji Yaoshue's hand. He shook his head and said, if he can take a punch from me, he'll be considered capable. Chapter 2061. If he can take a punch from me, he'll be considered capable. Hearing that, Ji Yaoshue was relieved and could not help but smile. She allowed Su Zimo to hold her hand and walked toward Shen Huang. Everyone from Tianhuang mainland was excited and their eyes were filled with endless anticipation. That was the boldness of eternal Wu Huang. A single sentence was enough to make one's blood boil. When the emperor heard this, his handsome face instantly turned ashen and gloomy. Since he started cultivating until now, when had he ever heard such arrogant words? It was no longer a provocation or contempt. It was complete disregard. As the Shen Huang of the continent of gods, he thought that his combat strength was unparalleled and had reached the peak of a small world. When had he ever been insulted as such? Wu Huang. Shen Huang channeled his blood qi slowly and said coldly, you're too arrogant. This is a small world. No matter what cultivation realm you're at, there's a limit to the power you can unleash. Your karmic fire can no longer hurt me. I don't believe that I can't even take a punch from you. As soon as he said that, the blood qi in Shen Huang's body surged and rose to its peak rapidly. Endless golden light shone from his body like a blazing sun that emitted a blinding brilliance. His divine blood surged like a tidal wave. When Shen Huang first set foot on Tianhuang mainland, even the emperors of Tianhuang mainland could not withstand the golden light of his blood qi that shone from his body. However, at this moment, the golden light seemed to be restrained by an invisible force and shrunk continuously. It could only flicker on the surface of Shen Huang's body. Su Zimo's blood qi rose slowly as well. There seemed to be a gigantic furnace burning fiercely in his body. Before Shen Huang's blood qi golden light could shine over, it was burned into nothingness by Su Zimo's blood qi. The space around Su Zimo's body was distorted. As for Ji Yaoshue, she did not feel uncomfortable at all beside Su Zimo. Instead, it was as though a warm ray of sunlight shone on her body. It was extremely comfortable. Su Zimo merely walked towards Shen Huang one step at a time. The golden blood qi in Shen Huang's body seemed to be suppressed by an incomparably powerful aura and could not break free. The sound of tides in Shen Huang's body had already disappeared. The speed of his bloodline circulation slowed down. Initially, Shen Huang was a blazing sun. However, as Su Zimo approached, his blazing sun gradually shrank into a fireball. Veins popped on Shen Huang's forehead and neck. If he could not break free, his blood qi would be completely suppressed by Su Zimo before he could even attack. Shen Huang reared his head and roared into the skies. Streams of milky white light flowed down from the crown of God once more. That light allowed Shen Huang to obtain temporary relief. Shen Huang was invigorated and burst forth with his blood qi. The sound of tides appeared once more. His body floated up slowly and a gigantic phantom appeared beneath him. It was an ancient and mysterious pyramid built with gigantic rocks. It was golden and natural and shone with golden light with a wanton might. At the bottom of this pyramid, there were densely packed creatures kneeling. There were all kinds of races, hundreds of millions of them, and one couldn't see the end of them. Every single living being had their palms pressed together and looked up at the pyramid above piously, chanting prayers continuously. Above the heads of these creatures, golden threads spread out and finally converged into the pyramid. Shen Huang stood at the top of the pyramid and spread his arms. Through the pyramid beneath him, he absorbed a mysterious power from the billions of living beings endlessly, and the golden light in his body intensified. His aura was rising continuously. The energy fluctuations emitted from his body turned increasingly terrifying as well. At that moment, Shen Huang wore the crown of God and trampled on billions of living beings, as though he was the only god in the world. It was the bloodline phenomenon of a Protoss. How could this be? The emperors of Tianhuang mainland exclaimed, as though they sensed something. Above their heads, golden threads of power were channeled towards the pyramid beneath Shenhuang's feet as well. Shenhuang's bloodline phenomenon had turned the entire world into his divine kingdom and absorbed the power of all living beings in the world. Wu Huang, my bloodline phenomenon has fused with my peerless divine power, the divine kingdom in Palm. This entire world is my kingdom. All of you in Tianhuang mainland are my subjects. How are you going to fight against me? Standing on the pyramid, Shenhuang's dignified voice spread in all directions. Your divine kingdom is merely a speck of dust in my furnace. How are you going to fight against me? Right then, Su Zimo's voice sounded. Shenhuang's expression changed starkly. Suddenly, he realized that Su Zimo had already vanished from his divine kingdom unknowingly. As for Su Zimo's voice, it came from all directions and seemed to be outside his divine kingdom. Immediately after, be it everyone from Tianhuang mainland or the Protoss army, all of them witnessed a strange and terrifying sight. Shenhuang's divine kingdom seemed to be shrinking. Outside the divine kingdom, there was a gigantic furnace that enveloped the divine kingdom. Outside the furnace, flames burned furiously. Shenhuang's divine kingdom contained heaven and earth and absorbed the power of all living beings. However, Su Zimo's Wu Dao furnace devoured the divine kingdom and burned furiously, wanting to burn it into ashes. Shenhuang's divine kingdom had an extremely high intent and contained heaven and earth. However, Su Zimo's Wu Dao furnace was superior. The temperature within the divine kingdom rose continuously. Flames burst forth from the gigantic pyramid. The divine emperor paled in fright. Right then, Su Zimo suddenly appeared in front of him. Holding Jiaoshue's hand with his left hand, he clenched his right fist and punched toward Shenhuang. Rumble! Boom! Boom! Blood surged within Su Zimo's body. It was not the sound of a tsunami, but more like raging waves crashing against the shore. It was massive and shuddering. Shenhuang roared and channeled all the power within his body as well. His golden blood qi converged into a single point as he waved his golden fist and punched toward Su Zimo. Boom! The two fists collided, and an earth-shattering explosion erupted. At that instant, the rare phenomenon in the surroundings vanished into thin air. Su Zimo and Shenhuang returned to Tianhuang mainland once more. The divine kingdom and furnace had vanished. Their fists collided motionlessly. The world was silent. Everyone held their breaths and waited for the final outcome. Crack, crack, crack. Suddenly, a series of faint cracking sounds could be heard from the battlefield. However, it sounded like thunder in everyone's ears. Cracks appeared on Shenhuang's face one after another. Those cracks extended to his entire body rapidly. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the divine emperor's body instantly exploded into a cloud of golden blood mist. The moment the golden blood mist appeared, it was refined and turned into ashes once more. Emperors could be reborn from a single drop of blood. But now, Shenhuang did not even have a single drop of divine blood left. The Protoss army watched everything in a daze, unable to accept it for a moment. Defeated. Shenhuang had been utterly defeated. It was as Wu Huang had said, he could not even withstand a single punch from him. Chapter 2062. Ever since Shenhuang became the emperor of the continent of gods, his combat strength was heaven-defying and invincible in the lower realm. Even the high priest who had lived for countless years in the central divine city of the continent of gods had said that Shenhuang was the most powerful Shenhuang in the history of the Protoss. But now, Shenhuang's body had been shattered by Emperor Araki Takashi's punch. Not even a drop of divine blood was left. Wu Huang's punch not only landed heavily on Shenhuang's body, but it also shattered the confidence and pride of the Protoss army. Actually, Shenhuang was right. Wu Dao's true body was in the lower realm. Although his cultivation realm was comparable to an earth immortal of the upper realm, he did not dare to use his full strength. If he used the power of an earth immortal, he would not even need to make a move. Just a glance would be enough to kill Shenhuang. However, at the same time, he would also attract the backlash of the laws of heaven and earth. Therefore, Wu Dao's true body just now's attack did not exceed the upper limit of the lower realm strength, nor did it reach the level of a mystic immortal of the upper realm. Even so, Shen Huang could not withstand a punch from Wu Dao's true body. Suddenly, the crown of gods floating in the air suddenly turned into a golden light and sped toward the west. Su Zimo's eyes turned, and a huge pressure descended, suppressing the crown of gods. The space around the crown of gods seemed to be imprisoned by an invisible force. The 8 gems of the crown of gods once again flowed with milky white light. The crown of gods' body trembled, and it actually broke free from Su Zimo's divine sense pressure. In an instant, it fled thousands of kilometers deep into the Kunlun ruins and fled towards the 5-colored cave that connected to the continent of God. He's not dead. Su Zimo sneered. Shenhuang's primordial spirit had chosen to escape into the crown of gods to avoid the calamity. At this moment, Shenhuang's primordial spirit used the crown of gods to escape. It was obvious that he wanted to escape back to the continent of gods. The power contained within the crown of God was rather strange. It was actually able to break free from Su Zimo's spiritual consciousness suppression, which surprised him. Aren't you going to chase after them? Ji Yaoshue watched as Shenhuang fled. She was a little worried. If such a powerful enemy could not be eliminated, it would become a huge disaster for the infinite wasteland domain in the future. I'm fine. Su Zimo shook his head and said, he doesn't have divine blood, so it's hard for him to reconstruct his corporeal body. After pausing for a moment, Su Zimo looked to the west and said, plus, even if he didn't run back, I'm going to take a look at the godly continent. The blood debt of the millions of living beings in Tianhuang mainland must be repaid with divine blood. Su Zimo was truly enraged this time. Because of his relationship with Nian Qi, he wasn't too wary of the Protoss. To think that the invasion of the Protoss this time round would cause such heavy damage to Tianhuang mainland. More importantly, Ji Yaoshue was injured and some of his old friends of Tianhuang mainland were almost killed as well. If he had returned a little later, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Back then, Nian Qi was conferred the title of emperor and came to kneel down to the gods to complete his redemption. If not for Nian Qi, Su Zimo was prepared to head to the western continent of gods alone after quelling the blood demon catastrophe more than 2,000 years ago and wreak havoc. Su Zimo turned around and looked at the Cloud Dragon Emperor and the others of Tianhuang mainland before extending his palm. An extremely dense life force condensed in his palm as the power of divine powers surged and rumbled. It was endless. Su Zimo's spirit consciousness moved and he waved his palm gently in midair, muttering softly, summoning wind and rain. Swoosh! A gentle breeze blew and drizzled. The wind contained a tremendous amount of life force, as though it was a spring breeze that was full of vitality. The withered plants on the ground that had been soaked in blood began to grow again under the gentle breeze. The injuries of the people of Tianhuang mainland were also alleviated significantly. In the sky, it was drizzling with a dark green color. As the raindrops fell on the bodies of the people of Tianhuang mainland, their wounds healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Even the wounds on the emperors of Tianhuang mainland that were penetrated by Shenhuang's golden light were healing. Wu Dao's true body had fused 2 supreme divine powers and was endless in vitality. With the momentum of summoning wind and rain, he descended and healed the injuries of the thousands of living beings of Tianhuang mainland. Such a method could be considered a miracle. Su Zimo looked at the people of Tianhuang mainland and asked, "Do you want to follow me to the western continent to take a look?" Upon hearing that, the living beings of Tianhuang mainland were in an uproar. The martial dominator was implying that he was going to lead them to the west, to the godly continent. Of course. Little Fatty laughed and was the first to stand out. I've never seen what the godly mainland looks like in my life. Let's go to the godly mainland too and kill them all. The people of Tianhuang mainland shouted loudly. Lowly race, how dare you invade the territory of the Protoss? You will be judged by God. A commander of the Protoss army stood out and said loudly. Another Protoss in black robes said coldly, No foreign race can set foot on the godly mainland and leave alive. Wu Huang, I advise you to think carefully. A Protoss commander said in a deep voice, if you bring people into the godly mainland now, it's equivalent to declaring war on the Protoss. You have to think carefully. Declaring war on the Protoss is a disaster for you and Tianhuang mainland. The Blue Dragon Emperor scolded, so what if I declare war? It's the Protoss who declared war on Tianhuang mainland first. Su Zimo slowly turned around and looked at the vast Protoss army opposite him. He said indifferently, I don't know what you're talking about. But I know one thing. To you, I'm a disaster. Before he finished speaking, Su Zimo held Ji Yaoshue's hand and flew toward the western continent. He didn't even look at the Protoss army below him. The Protoss army was slightly stunned. Was Wu Huang of Tianhuang mainland going to let them go just like that? At that moment, Su Zimo took a step forward in midair, and a huge green lotus flower appeared under his feet. The green lotus flower emitted rays of divine light. It was sacred and flawless. The bodies of the Protoss enveloped by the green lotus exploded one after another, turning into clouds of blood mist. They were washed away by the green light released by the green lotus flower and turned into nothingness. Even the Emperor of the Protoss was not spared and died on the spot. Su Zimo took a second step, and another huge green lotus flower appeared under his feet. Large patches of Protoss were purified by the green lotus flower. With every step Su Zimo took, a green lotus flower would appear under his feet. Flowers rained down from the sky, and golden lotuses bloomed from the ground. These were two Buddhist mystical abilities that were extremely powerful. If one could comprehend these two mystical abilities to the extreme, they would be able to comprehend one of the Buddhist mystical abilities, lotus blooming with every step. Everything within one step would become a pure land. All foreign beings within this step would be purified by Qinglian and turned into a pure land of Buddhism. There were no exceptions. When Su Zimo held Ji Yaoshue's hand and walked into the depths of Kunlun ruins, the Protoss army behind him had been purified by Qinglian and turned into dust, forever buried in Kunlun ruins. Chapter 2063. Su Zimo and Ji Yaoshue led the Tianhuang cultivators into the colorful cave and experienced a strange feeling. It was as if a long time had passed, but also as if it had only been a few breaths. The Tianhuang cultivators felt their eyes brighten. They had already left Tianhuang and entered another world. An unfamiliar, ancient, solemn, and dignified aura rushed toward them. The godly mainland. Aliens. At this moment, a loud shout came from the front. There were also many Protoss guarding this space node on the godly mainland. Now that they saw Su Zimo and the other Tianhuang cultivators enter the godly mainland, they were all shocked. All the Protoss knew that Shenhuang was leading the Protoss army to flatten Tianhuang and rule it with the faith of the Protoss. But not long ago, a golden light flew out of this space node and fled toward the central divine city. Most of the Protoss didn't see what it was. Only some of the Protoss emperors guarding the border vaguely recognized it. It was the supreme artifact of the Protoss, the godly crown. This godly crown came from the upper realm and was more honorable than the four ruling artifacts of the Protoss. Only Shenhuang was qualified to wear it and control it. The emperor of the Protoss emperors at the border had a bad feeling. Unless something major happened, Shenhuang would always wear the godly crown. Could it be that something big had happened? The emperor of the Protoss then denied this speculation. Before Shenhuang left, the Protoss's high priest used his blood essence to release the Protoss's secret technique, the Great Prophecy Technique, to predict good and bad luck. The result of the Great Prophecy Technique was great luck. Shenhuang would sweep across Tianhuang. No living creature, no obstacle, could stop the Protoss from conquering Tianhuang. Not only the emperor of the Protoss, but all the other Protoss didn't doubt the high priest's prophecy at all. Shenhuang was the ruler of the godly continent. The position of the high priestess was unique. She was the wise one of the Protoss, and even Shenhuang had to be respectful to her. This was because the Protoss high priestess possessed the most mysterious secret technique of the Protoss, the Great Prophecy Technique. In the primordial age, the Protoss invaded Heaven Wasteland. Due to the arrogance and confidence of Shenhuang back then, he didn't ask the high priest to come out of seclusion and acted on his own initiative. In the end, he suffered a crushing defeat. The outcome of the great prophecy spell would never be wrong. This was the common understanding of the Protoss. With that in mind, the Emperor of Protoss didn't react. It was not until he saw Su Zimo and the others from Heaven Wasteland Domain appear in front of him that he realized that something big had happened. Outsiders. The Emperor of Protoss slowly rose into the air and came to the front of Su Zimo. With a cold expression, he slowly said, "Scram. Lowly and filthy creatures like you are not allowed to set foot on the continent of gods. The outsiders are here. Kill them." The Protoss at the border of the continent of gods noticed the people from Heaven Wasteland Domain. They let out a series of roars and charged toward them with murderous intent. The deep-rooted arrogance in the blood of the Protoss made their first reaction when they saw the people from Heaven Wasteland Domain was to look down on them. Su Zimo's expression was indifferent. He didn't even look at the Emperor of Protoss opposite him. He just walked forward side by side with Ji Yaoxue. He reached out his hand and gently clenched his fist in the direction of the Emperor of Protoss from afar. Boom! The space around this sovereign of the god race collapsed in an instant. Under everyone's gaze, the Emperor of Protoss was crushed by a terrifying force that suddenly appeared and turned into a cloud of blood mist. His body and soul were destroyed. The Protoss at the border had just gathered. Before they could rush over, they saw this scene. The Protoss let out a series of exclamations. Their faces were filled with horror. The Emperor of Protoss died just like that. He couldn't even withstand one attack from the other party. You, who are you? An ancestral god tried his best to suppress the fear in his heart and questioned Su Zimo and the others loudly. I am Araki Takashi. I'm here to collect a blood debt from the Protoss. Su Zimo said as he flicked his finger. White sword energy burst forth from his fingertip and swarmed toward the Protoss army opposite him. Heaven-slaying sword energy, 108,000 swords. In the hands of Wu Dao's true body, there were more than 108,000 swords of heaven-slaying sword energy. It was practically endless. Killing intent shook the heavens and shifted the stars. Even the Emperor of Protoss couldn't withstand one attack from Su Zimo. In the face of the heaven-slaying sword energy released by Su Zimo, the remaining Protoss army was even more fragile. Their lives were worthless. What divine blood? What vision? What divine artifact? What divine ability? All of their trump cards couldn't withstand a single heaven-slaying sword energy. Wu Dao's true body's understanding of the heaven-slaying sword energy far exceeded 2,000 years ago. Its power was naturally terrifying. Even a few ancestral gods at the border of God Mainland had their glabella pierced by a sword energy and died. The people of Tianhuang Mainland originally intended to attack and have a fierce battle with the army of God Mainland. But soon, they realized that they didn't need to move at all. All they had to do was follow behind Wu Huang and that was enough. Su Zimo drove straight in without stopping. The people of Tianhuang Mainland followed closely and looked around. God Mainland had its own unique civilization. The buildings, mountains, rivers, and even trees on this land were far from Tianhuang Mainland. There were billions of small kiliocosms and each small kiliocosm gave birth to different civilizations and living beings. Along the way, Protoss experts stood out from time to time, wanting to block the path of the people of Tianhuang Mainland. However, they were casually killed by Su Zimo. Su Zimo wanted to lead the people of Tianhuang Mainland west and kill their way into the central divine city. He wanted to kill Shenhuang under the watch of the Protoss. He wanted to use the blood of the Protoss to leave an indelible mark on this land and this race. That mark was called fear. At the same time, in the central divine city. This divine city had experienced countless years and remained standing. The city walls shone with a golden metallic luster, sacred and flawless with distinct edges. This divine city was the center of God Mainland. At that moment, a golden light flew into the divine city and barged into the palace where Shenhuang cultivated. No one could stop it. Chapter 2064. Su Zimo led the group of Tianhuang mainland west, and before long, they saw the first ancient city ahead. In front of the ancient city, there were already many Protoss knights and mages arranged in a formation. The knights were in front and the mages were at the back. Although there were only a few thousand of them, the weakest among them was at the conjoint body realm. Among the crowd, there was even a mage who was at the Emperor realm. Eastern barbarians, stop in your tracks. The leading Protoss knight wielded a sword and shouted at Su Zimo and the others. Outsiders from Tianhuang mainland, since you've stepped into the territory of the Protoss, let the light of the Protoss purify your filthy souls and send you to hell. The law overlord standing at the back waved the staff in his hand and chanted in an ancient language. A powerful energy fluctuation spread out in midair. A blazing light spread out from the tip of the law overlord's staff and entered the heads of everyone from Tianhuang mainland, scattering down a large rain of light. Every drop of this rain of light could kill a low-level emperor. Kill! The many Protoss knights at the front roared and charged towards the group of Tianhuang mainland as well. Su Zimo harumphed coldly. The moment he said that, the law overlord froze in midair. He widened his eyes, which were filled with shock and fear. Streaks of blood appeared on his face. The law overlord's body was relatively weak, and he stood at the back to prevent his body from being fatally injured. However, he did not expect his body to be unable to withstand a single harumph from Su Zimo. The golden armor of the Protoss knights at the front exploded as well. How dare a firefly compete with the moon? Su Zimo hollered softly and extended his palm. It was as though he was holding a ball of purple light in his palm. Su Zimo clenched his fist. Buzz. This ball of light exploded, and countless purple lights burst out from the gaps between his fingers, spreading out in all directions. The light rain in the air was swept by these purple lights, and instantly evaporated. Before the many Protoss knights at the front could get close, they were swept by a large expanse of purple light and fell from the sky one after another. Before they even landed on the ground, these Protoss knights had already turned into corpses. The law overlord stood alone in the air. There were no longer any Protoss knights around him to protect him. Without even looking at him, Su Zimo continued to lead the people of Heaven Wasteland domain forward. Just now, the sound domain's secret technique he released was enough to shatter the Emperor's primordial spirit. Bang! The law overlord's physical body was torn apart and his Yuan spirit was covered in cracks. It was dim and lifeless as it slowly dissipated. There were many Protoss standing on the walls of the ancient city. These Protoss were weak and most of them had yet to reach the body integration realm. However, these Protoss gazed at Su Zimo without the slightest bit of fear. Instead, their gazes were filled with provocation. This confidence and arrogance had already seeped into their bones. Outsider, do you know what you're doing? Ignorant barbarian, you're killing a god. Godslayers will definitely receive the judgment of the gods on the continent of gods and receive divine punishment. Suddenly, a series of shouts sounded from the ancient city. Godslayers will definitely receive the judgment of the gods and receive divine punishment. In the massive ancient city, tens of millions of Protoss gathered together and let out a series of shouts that shook the 9 heavens in a majestic manner. Ha! Su Zimo suddenly reared his head in laughter. His laughter reverberated throughout the world and drowned out the shouts of the tens of millions of Protoss. In an instant, it was as if Su Zimo's laughter was the only thing left in this world. Crack, crack, crack. Huge cracks appeared on the walls of the ancient city. Even these indestructible walls that had endured the passage of time could not withstand Su Zimo's laughter. Judgment of the gods? Divine punishment? Su Zimo retracted his smile and looked at the many Protoss in the ancient city opposite him, saying slowly, "In this place, I'm the god." The moment he said that, the ancient city collapsed, as though it could not withstand such a terrifying aura. Countless Protoss were buried in the dust and let out tragic cries. Su Zimo's spirit consciousness moved and swept through the ruins of the ancient city, capturing all the conjoint body mighty figures and ancestor gods hidden in the ancient city. With a single thought, All those Protoss mighty figures and ancestor gods died on the spot. Su Zimo led everyone from Tianhuang mainland and continued heading west. Central God City. Many experts of the Protoss gathered beside the high priest, and all of them looked towards the east. At that moment, it was not only the high priest, everyone in the God City could clearly see the terrifying scene in the east. A stream of purple chi was approaching slowly from the east. It was getting denser and even dyed the skies in the east a different color. Although they were far away, every Protoss in the central God City could feel an unstoppable pressure. High Priest, an emperor of the Protoss said in a deep voice, "Let us fight outside the city. The Light Knight army will definitely be able to kill these foreign races. If we scatter our forces now, we'll be sending ourselves to our deaths." The high priest shook his head. "Everyone listen to my orders. Gather in the central city and await the final battle." After a brief pause, the high priest asked again, "Has anyone informed the temple?" "We've already informed them. They'll be here soon." Behind the high priest, a little girl in red robes who was around 12 or 13 years old replied softly. "All right." The high priest was slightly relieved. "Once the divine emperor's body is reconstructed, we'll join forces with the temple knights and me. With the combined might of the city, we'll take on this Tianhuang mainland expert." "Grandpa High Priest, do you think this Tianhuang elite is the Wu Huang that Sister Nianqi mentioned?" the girl suddenly asked. Wu Huang. The high priest was dazed for a moment. The words that Nianqi said to him before he ascended flashed across his mind. Never, ever invade Tianhuang again. There was an elite that the godly mainland could not withstand. In fact, when Nianqi returned from Tianhuang and was crowned emperor, other than Nianqi's own talent, the high priest also played a part in it. In his great prophecy technique, he predicted that the Protoss would face a great calamity, and the way to overcome it lay with Nianqi. That was the reason why Nianqi was able to overcome the objections of the masses and become Shenhuang eventually with his help. The high priest did not stop Nianqi from joining forces with Tianhuang to complete his redemption. Later on, news from Tianhuang also verified his great prophecy technique. A woman appeared on Tianhuang and killed experts of the upper world consecutively. Eventually, she even perfected the laws of heaven and earth of Tianhuang before ascending. When that woman appeared, even the gods in one of the most ancient and secretive places on the godly continent were so scared that they didn't even dare to breathe. Could it be Wu Huang? The girl asked again, as though she had something on her mind. Those memories flashed through the high priest's mind and he gradually snapped out of his stupor. When he heard the girl's question, he shook his head. "I don't know either." He did not know who this Tianhuang elite was. However, he knew one thing. His great prophecy technique did not detect the existence of such a terrifying expert on Tianhuang, nor did it predict what would happen today. The ancient secret skills of the Protoss were useless against this person. It was as if the continent was cut in half. Densely packed Protoss stood on the city walls. Some of these gods were wielding spears, some were wielding greatswords, some were wielding longbows, and some were wielding staves. Every single Protoss surged with golden blood chi and shone with a resplendent light. Their battle intent surged as they glared at the people of planet Tianhuang with murderous intent. Almost all the top experts of the land of gods were gathered here, ready to kill the people of planet Tianhuang. The number of Protoss in the central divine city had reached billions. In fact, there were even Protoss from all directions gathering in the central divine city. Kill, kill, kill. Within the central divine city, many god race beings broke out into cheers. One could imagine what kind of aura it was when billions of Protoss gathered together and roared at the sky with their blood boiling. The entire world was trembling. On the side of planet Tianhuang, even the storyteller, the Cloud Dragon Emperor, and the other emperors of planet Tianhuang were slightly shocked at this moment, let alone ordinary cultivators. Protoss were innately powerful. If the billions of Protoss swarmed together with the ancestor gods and emperors among them, even they would be drowned in an instant. The fact that the land of gods could constantly conquer other small worlds showed that it had a foundation that other worlds could not compare to. Think about it. Back in the day on planet Tianhuang, there were only a few tens of thousands of Protoss, but they had already become one of the primordial 9 races of planet Tianhuang and the most terrifying force on planet Tianhuang. Now, billions of Protoss were gathered in the central divine city. What a terrifying scene! Even though the people of planet Tianhuang had absolute confidence in Wu Huang, their confidence was shaken at this moment. The difference in strength between the two sides was too great. On the side of planet Tianhuang, the people of planet Tianhuang were aggressive all the way to the west like an unstoppable flood. However, when they reached the central divine city, they ran into a boundless golden ocean. This golden ocean was already enraged. Raging waves swept up, and it could surge over at any time and drown them. The people of planet Tianhuang were pale. Facing such a terrifying formation in the central divine city, many people were already terrified and did not dare to go forward. You guys can just stand here. Su Zimo glanced sideways and said to the people of planet Tianhuang behind him. Wu Huang will accompany you. The storyteller, Cloud Dragon Emperor, and the others hurriedly said. No need. Su Zimo shook his head and said, You guys can't help me. Just watch from here. With that, Su Zimo walked alone in the direction of the central divine city with a calm expression. Even in the face of such a huge formation of Protoss, Su Zimo's eyes were still calm and composed as he walked forward slowly. Billions of Protoss condensed into an invisible aura that was enough to crush everything. However, when this aura surged over and landed on Su Zimo, it disappeared silently and did not even ruffle his purple robe. As Su Zimo continued to approach, his aura rose rapidly. His black hair fluttered without wind and his eyes seemed to be burning with flames. Su Zimo's footsteps were neither fast nor slow. However, every step he took in the air would cause a huge tremor. A spiderweb-like crack appeared in the void beneath his feet. The sky changed color and the earth shook. Chapter 2066. As Su Zimo got closer, his energy also rose. In the end, he was able to fight against billions of Protoss. Although the god race beings were shouting with killing intent, Su Zimo could sense a hint of fear in the depths of their eyes. They were afraid. For countless years, the Protoss had been killing everywhere and trampling countless creatures under their feet. They had never taken humans seriously. And yet, the human in front of them had reached a level they couldn't imagine. Suddenly, a man appeared on the city wall. He was wearing a loose red robe and holding a white wand. His hair was white and his face was full of wrinkles. The old man's eyes were deep. Even though he was already past his prime, his deep blue eyes were still clear and bright. They flickered with the light of wisdom. Wu Huang, the old man said slowly. I'm the Grand Priest of the Protoss. I hope you can consider the big picture and take the people of planet Tianhuang back to your world to avoid this disastrous war. The Protoss has offended planet Tianhuang many times. I'm here to collect a debt. Su Zimo said. What happened back then is in the past, the Grand Priest said. 2,000 years ago, Nianqi and Shunhuang also knelt in the God-slaying valley and prayed to the corpse of a god to complete their redemption. Su Zimo smiled and said, I won't pursue what happened back then. This time, the Protoss attacked planet Tianhuang again and almost 10 million creatures died. How are the Protoss going to pay this debt of blood? Martial Monarch, you've destroyed many ancient cities on the godly continent on your journey to the west. I'm afraid you've killed millions of gods. We've already paid this debt of blood. The Grand Priest said. That's not enough. Su Zimo shook his head. What do you want? The High Priest asked. Su Zimo's expression was cold as he slowly said, I want the Protoss to repay this debt of blood tenfold. How dare you? At this moment, an angry roar came from the divine city. Then, a roar similar to a dragon's roar sounded, majestic and angry. In the central divine city, a huge demonic beast slowly rose up. It had the head of a dragon but the body of a lizard. It had a pair of wings on its back and flames were coming out of its mouth. Its eyes were ferocious and it growled threateningly at Su Zimo. On the back of this demonic beast stood a man with a huge spear in his hand. He was wearing golden armor and had a terrifying aura. Heavens, it's actually a dragon knight from the temple. My Protoss dragon knight has appeared. Wu Huang must die. Cheers erupted from the divine city. When the Protoss saw this man, their morale was greatly boosted. In the legends of the Protoss, there was a type of Protoss knight that was the dragon knight. Only a divine dragon that had subdued the Protoss was qualified to become a dragon knight. During the Primordial War, almost all of the Protoss divine dragons had died in the god-slaying canyon at the hands of two gods. Since then, the Protoss divine dragons had disappeared from the continent of gods. The Protoss did not expect that there would be a legendary dragon knight in the divine city. Wu Huang. The high priest's gaze became deeper as he slowly said, I advise you to retreat as soon as possible. The foundation of the Protoss is not something you can imagine. The high priest's words seemed to have a deeper meaning. Why are you wasting words with a foreign race? The dragon knight said coldly. If a foreign race dares to step on the territory of the Protoss, they will suffer divine punishment. Boom. At this moment, a loud sound came from the center of the divine city. Wu Huang, today is the day you die. A majestic voice sounded. Then, a golden figure wearing a divine crown slowly rose and descended on the city wall. This person was Shen Huang, who had escaped from the Tianhuang continent. Shen Huang held a large sword in his right hand that was covered with pitch-black patterns. In his left hand was a pitch-black shield that surged with ink-like mist. In Shen Huang's hands were the Misfortune Sword and Calamity Shield of the four great divine artifacts. Su Zimo was slightly surprised. He had already refined the God King's divine blood. He didn't expect that in just a few days, the God King would once again condense a physical body. This was most likely due to the divine crown. Shen Huang is invincible. Supremacy. When the Protoss saw Shen Huang appear, they burst into cheers again. Now, the three top Protoss experts, Shen Huang, the Dragon Knight, and the High Priest, were gathered, causing the Protoss's aura to rise to the peak. Su Zimo's expression was calm. It had to be said that the power cultivated by these three Protoss had almost reached the limit of the lower realm's power. Even Qinglian's true body back then might not be able to win against the three of them. Unfortunately, they were facing Wu Dao's true body. This was an anomaly among the 3,000 worlds. Wu Dao's true body jumped out of the three realms and was not in the five elements. Even the Protoss's great prophecy technique could not detect his traces. Wu Huang, no matter how strong you are, there is a limit in this lower realm. The God Emperor said loudly, Your strength, I already know it in my heart. You can defeat me alone, but you definitely can't defeat the three of us. You can't defeat my Protoss army of billions. All pros, listen to my orders. At this moment, Shen Huang raised the sword of misfortune in his hand, paused for a moment, pointed at Su Zimo in front of him and roared, Kill! Kill! With this order, a loud roar erupted in the divine city. Billions of Protoss poured out like a golden stormy wave, fiercely crashing towards Su Zimo. Heaven and earth shook. This kind of power, not to mention one person. Even an entire world would find it difficult to resist. At the same time, the Dragon Knight rode the divine dragon, holding one of the four divine artifacts, the Spear of Judgment, and rushed towards Su Zimo. In the blink of an eye, the Dragon Knight had already arrived in front of Su Zimo. The distance of more than 10,000 feet was covered in an instant. On the other side, Shen Huang, with the divine crown on his head and the sword of misfortune and the shield of calamity in his hands, had also appeared on the other side of Su Zimo. On the city wall, the high priest's figure slowly rose into the air, waving one of the four divine artifacts, the Staff of Dawn, slightly looking up at the sky with a pious expression and chanting. Endless light shone from the Staff of Dawn. The three peak Protoss powerhouses attacked at the same time. Behind the three Protoss powerhouses, there was an army of billions of Protoss pressuring the border with a mighty momentum. In fact, what Shen Huang said just now was right. If the power that Su Zimo possessed was only limited to that punch he delivered to the Divine Emperor back in Tianhuang mainland, it would have been enough. It was indeed very difficult for him to resist the current situation. However, The punch Su Zimo used to shatter Shenhuang's body was not the peak of the power he could use in the lower realm. You really don't know anything about my power. Su Zimo sighed softly. Bookhouse Reading Website. Chapter 2067. God's Bind. Accompanied by the recitation of the Protoss's high priest, he waved the staff of dawn and scattered a series of godly lights. Suddenly, ropes that shone with golden light appeared on Su Zimo's body out of thin air, giving him no time to dodge at all. Although the high priest was the furthest away from Su Zimo and was casting his technique on the city wall, his attack was the first to arrive. The shimmering golden rope tightened continuously, as though it wanted to rip Su Zimo's body apart. What was even more frightening was that Su Zimo's bloodline could not be activated under the shroud of the golden light of the rope, as though it was suppressed by a mysterious power. The God's Bind was not only able to restrain a cultivator's body, but also their bloodline and essence spirit. Su Zimo's expression was calm and his eyes were emotionless. All of a sudden, a purple halo appeared behind Su Zimo. A deafening sound echoed from his body as well, as though he had broken free from some sort of shackle and opened a secret realm gate as his aura surged. A fate wheel appeared. Peng, peng, peng. The golden ropes that bound him were severed by the purple halo and dissipated into nothingness. Right then, the high priest's second secret skill descended. God's Judgment. Suddenly, a gigantic golden sword appeared above Su Zimo's head and slashed down viciously at his neck. Buzz. A second purple halo appeared behind Su Zimo. Boom. The golden long sword landed directly on the purple halo, and a loud bang was heard. The golden sword dissipated. Su Zimo did not budge at all. God's Punishment. Before the high priest's third secret skill could be formed, another purple halo appeared behind Su Zimo. The third fate wheel descended. Although they were 10,000 feet apart, the high priest shuddered and swayed. A trace of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth and he looked even older, as though he was on the verge of death. He released 3 Protoss secret skills consecutively and gave it his all without holding back. Even so, his 3 secret techniques were still defeated one by one. The last secret skill was destroyed by Wu Dao's fate wheel before it could be formed. The essence, spirit and body of the high priest suffered an intense backlash. Regardless of the outcome of this battle, the Protoss would not be able to hold on any longer. What the hell is that? In the high priest's eyes, under the illumination of the 3 purple halos, Su Zimo seemed to have become the only true god in the world, the sovereign of the world, looking down on all living beings. Even the noble Protoss had to bow their heads. Even though Wu Dao himself had reached the 6th level of the Fate Wheel realm, he was afraid of the backlash from the laws of heaven and earth. Therefore, he could not release his full strength. 3 Fate Wheels was the pinnacle of power in the mortal world. When Wu Dao's original body fought against the blood demon Dao Lord, he had released 3 Fate Wheels. In Tianhuang mainland, even though Su Zimo destroyed Shenhuang with a single punch, he still held back and did not use the power of his Fate Wheels at all. Fate Wheels were the wheels of life. The 3 wheels of life might seem ordinary, but they were condensed and intertwined with all the Daos and skills that Wu Dao's original body had fused and refined since he started cultivating. The power of Wu Dao's original body would only reach the pinnacle when he released his Fate Wheels. With the arrival of the 3 Fate Wheels, Su Zimo's power surged. The 3 secret skills of the High Priest arrived and the 3 Fate Wheels of Wu Dao's original body condensed to break them. Although it took time to describe, it all happened in an instant. Bloodline Phenomenon. Divine Blood Ring. Heavenly God's Descent. Judgment Strike. When the Divine Emperor and the Dragon Knight arrived before Su Zimo, they released their bloodline phenomenons and innate divine powers without holding back at all, bursting forth with the most ferocious killing power. Fight! Su Zimo hollered with 3 Fate Wheels. Against the ferocious attacks of Shenhuang and the Dragon Knight, he did not dodge or evade at all. Instead, he went against the momentum and intertwined Daos beneath his feet, forming the image of a coiled turtle and snake. The coiled turtle and snake roared into the skies. Boom! The ferocious attacks of Shenhuang and the Dragon Knight were blocked by the image of the turtle and snake. Wielding the sword of misfortune, Shenhuang channeled his blood qi and slashed forward. The dragon knight gripped the spear of judgment with both hands and thrust forward with a sharp expression. The evil dragon beneath the dragon knight roared as well, spitting pitch-black flames from its mouth as it bit toward Su Zimo's legs. Su Zimo glared at Shenhuang with a burning gaze. His blood qi surged and he raised his hand to punch. Wu Dao's original body did not have any weapons. His fists and his body were his weapons. That punch was indestructible and there was nothing it could not break. With that punch, the air around Shenhuang seemed to have burned up. Even the divine blood in his body boiled uncontrollably and began to evaporate. At that moment, Shenhuang felt as though his body was about to explode. Shenhuang had never experienced such a terrifying punch. It was even more terrifying and despairing than the punch he experienced back in Tianhuang mainland. Initially, he thought that he would be able to deal with Su Zimo with the help of a divine weapon. But now, in the face of such a terrifying punch, the divine emperor actually had the misconception that the sword of misfortune in his hand was like a piece of paper. Shenhuang wanted to roar and counterattack with all his might. However, he realized that he could only open his mouth and could not even make a sound. Su Zimo's punch was as violent as fire and seemed as though it could incinerate everything. The moment Shenhuang opened his mouth, his throat seemed as though it could spew fire. Shenhuang bit the tip of his tongue gently and spat out a stream of golden essence blood onto the sword of misfortune. Xing! A series of pitch-black fiend qi surged from the sword. Shenhuang raised the sword of misfortune and slashed down fiercely at Su Zimo's fist. Boom! The fist and sword collided. Shenhuang shuddered. He felt as though his sword did not land on flesh. Instead, it felt as though it had landed on metal. Crack, crack, crack. Immediately after, a series of horrifying cracking sounds could be heard from the sword of misfortune. Shenhuang's pupils constricted as he looked at the cracks that were gradually spreading on the sword. One of the 4 divine judgment weapons of God mainland was shattered by a single punch from Tianhuang mainland's ancient Wu Huang. All of a sudden, Shenhuang's expression changed starkly. Chapter 2068. On the other side, the dragon knight rode on the evil dragon and held the judgment spear in his hand. He had already closed in. The judgment spear flickered with a bright and dazzling light. Countless mysterious runes were engraved on the spear, condensing the power of the Protos Gula, judgment power. Most of the time, this kind of judgment force could even directly kill the opponent. Even if one could block the judgment spear's sharpness, they could easily be killed by this judgment power. At the same time, the evil dragon flapped its huge fleshy wings and spat out pitch-black flames from its mouth. It bit down on Su Zimo's legs. Su Zimo's qi and blood surged. Suddenly, a huge phantom appeared behind him. It looked like a dragon and a phoenix, with a dragon head and a phoenix tail. A pair of huge wings grew behind its back. They were red like flames, and its body seemed to be flowing with boiling lava. This phantom quickly condensed and descended between heaven and earth. The many Protoss that were charging over suddenly felt an aura that made their hearts palpitate. An unsuppressible fear that came from the depths of their bloodlines welled up in their hearts. The many Protoss looked up and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Taboo. Draco Phoenix. The phantom that condensed behind Su Zimo was actually a Draco Phoenix. Even the evil dragon under the Dragon Knight was affected. It stared at the Draco Phoenix phantom in the air with bewilderment in its eyes. What are you afraid of? This is fake. The Dragon Knight slapped the evil dragon under him and roared, "This is only his bloodline phenomenon." Suddenly, the Draco Phoenix phantom in the air suddenly opened its eyes. In an instant, this Draco Phoenix seemed to have come alive. Its eyes moved and landed on the evil dragon below. It opened its mouth and red dragon saliva flowed out. Roar! An earth-shattering roar erupted from the depths of the Draco Phoenix's throat. The evil dragon's roar made its body tremble in fear. Go! The Dragon Knight roared again and stabbed the judgment spear into the evil dragon's body. The evil dragon felt pain and could only attack Su Zimo. The Dragon Phoenix was furious. It swooped down and grabbed the back of the evil dragon with its huge and ferocious dragon claws. The dragon lowered its head and opened its mouth, biting the evil dragon's neck. Crack! The dragon's head was bitten off by the dragon phoenix. The evil dragon's body was also torn into two halves by the dragon and phoenix's claws, and its smelly internal organs fell from midair. Burned by the dragon phoenix flame, it quickly turned into ashes. Actually, the Dragon Knight was right. This dragon phoenix was indeed a bloodline phenomenon created by Su Zimo. After Wu Dao's original body merged with the dragon phoenix true body's physical body, he also merged its bloodline into his body and inherited this bloodline phenomenon. However, even if it was a phenomenon, it was still a taboo that couldn't be provoked. He killed an evil dragon at the emperor level on the spot. While the dragon phoenix was killing the evil dragon, the Dragon Knight had already arrived in midair. Descending from the sky, he wielded his spear with both hands and stabbed it towards Su Zimo's head. Without even looking, Su Zimo raised his palm and grabbed the judgment spear with his bare hands. The judgment spear was grabbed by Su Zimo single-handedly and did not budge at all. The power of judgment that surrounded the judgment spear was shattered by the three fate wheels behind Su Zimo instantly and did not affect him at all. Shing! Suddenly, Su Zimo exerted strength and grabbed the judgment spear, tugging it. Ah! The Dragon Knight cried out in pain and could not hold on to it at all. The judgment spear was snatched away by Su Zimo single-handedly and blood flowed from his palms. But he only said 3 words and could not go on. There was nothing unusual about Su Zimo. He swallowed the golden flame with a calm expression. There was no pain. Instead, he smacked his lips as if he was savoring the taste of the flame. The 3 fate wheels behind Su Zimo seemed to have become even more mysterious. Bang! With a backhand punch, Su Zimo slapped the Dragon Knight's face, smashing his head into pieces. The Dragon Knight's primordial spirit did not escape either. It was shattered by Su Zimo's punch and the headless body fell. The 3 top Protoss experts were swept away and suppressed by Su Zimo within a dozen breaths of time. Among them, the Dragon Knight and the dragon under him died on the battlefield. The remaining High Priest was exhausted. He stood on the city wall and looked at this scene, on the verge of collapse. The Divine Emperor suffered a crushing defeat and fled. Chapter 2069. On the city wall, flames also rose from the High Priest's body. "Grandpa High Priest!" The little girl behind him exclaimed and wanted to rush over. Although the little girl was also a Protoss, she didn't have too much sin in her body. Although Wu Dao's main body released karmic fire, not all Protoss would be burned by it. Protoss who didn't have enough sin wouldn't attract karmic fire. The High Priest shook his head slightly and released a divine sense to repel the little girl. He smiled bitterly. I didn't expect that the Protoss's calamity would still come. Even without the karmic fire, he couldn't hold on. The High Priest looked back at the ruined ancient city that was engulfed in a sea of fire. Then he looked at his clansmen who were running around in panic. His eyes dimmed. "Nian Qing, go." The High Priest murmured, "I hope you can save the rest of our clansmen." As soon as he finished speaking, the High Priest's old body was engulfed by the karmic fire and turned into dust. A red lotus was branded on the city wall. "Senior Wu Huang, Senior Wu Huang." This little girl called Nian Qing carelessly wiped away her tears. She carefully took out a piece of golden paper from her bosom and shouted towards the sky. Wu Dao's main body's figure was faintly discernible in the sky. He looked down at the world and his gaze fell on the little girl on the city wall. He was slightly stunned. The girl's blonde hair was slightly curled. She looked like Nian Qi when he first met her. Wu Dao's main body closed his eyes for a while before opening them. With a thought, the furnace between heaven and earth dissipated. The destructive flames also dissipated. In just a few dozen breaths, hundreds of millions of Protoss had fallen. Many of them were Protoss emperors, ancestral gods, and almighties. Wu Dao's main body didn't plan to kill them all. Among the Protoss, not all of them were warlike. They all wanted to conquer the world and be above all other living beings. Of course, Wu Dao's main body was decisive in killing. In this battle, He had almost killed all of the Protoss emperors and ancestor gods. After today, the Protoss would probably need an unimaginable amount of time to recover to his peak. It was even possible that he would never be able to recover from this setback. Of course, the most important purpose of Wu Dao's main body's massacre was to make the Protoss feel fear. He had to let this fear take root. He had to let this fear penetrate deep into the bloodline and soul of the Daoshan clan, so that the godly mainland would never dare to step into infinite wasteland. At this moment, the heaven and earth furnace had disappeared, and the flames had dissipated. The Protoss who had survived the calamity stood in their original positions, looking lost and dazed. Wu Dao's original body stood in the air and slowly walked towards the central divine city. He walked over their heads, but none of the Protoss dared to raise their heads. If any living being dared to walk over the Protoss before today, it would be an unacceptable provocation. They would definitely suffer the wrath of the Protoss. But at this moment, none of the Protoss dared to look at the figure in the air. They were afraid that their gazes would incur the wrath of that person, which would lead to a fatal disaster, or even the extinction of their race. All the Protoss realized that this person's methods could completely destroy the entire Protoss and turn the godly mainland into a lifeless, fiery hell. At this moment, in the face of this figure, every single god race being lowered their prideful heads. Not long after, Wu Dao's main body arrived at the city wall. He looked at the little girl beside him. His gaze fell on the golden page, and he was about to speak. In the distant void outside the city wall, a crack suddenly appeared, and a figure wearing a divine crown appeared. He looked at Wu Dao's main body as though he was looking at a dead man and said slowly, "In this world, there's a Protoss, a true god. The cultivation realm of the Protoss in the land of the gods has far surpassed that of an emperor and is at the level of a mystic god." Wu Dao's main body had a calm expression and there was no fluctuation in his eyes. Ha! When Shen Huang saw that, he burst into laughter. "Wu Huang, I think you're scared silly. Or do you not know what a mystic god is at all? Do you want me to explain it to you?" Chapter 2070. Seeing this scene, the billions of Protoss were terrified. However, with so many Protoss gathered in one place and charging towards Su Zimo, the situation was set. Even if someone wanted to retreat, it would be useless. The golden tide surged over, shaking the earth and mountains, as if it could drown everything. "You want to challenge me?" Wu Dao's eyes were like torches. His blood surged, and it was as if there was a tsunami in his body. He instantly pushed his qi and blood to the limit, and he disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Where is he? Teleportation? The charging momentum of the billions of god race warriors came to a halt. Doubts flashed through everyone's mind. Suddenly, the Protoss's expressions changed, and they looked up instinctively. The wind and clouds suddenly changed, and the sky suddenly changed color, as if it was covered by the setting sun. It was incomparably red and soaked in the sunset glow. Not long after, the color of the other half of the sky gradually changed back to sky blue. What's going on? What kind of divine ability is this? The Protoss looked around with bewildered expressions. Some of the gods even began to activate their primordial spirits and unleash a series of mystiques towards the strange firmament. However, when these divine abilities entered the void, they didn't cause any ripples and disappeared without a trace. "It's so hot. What's going on?" Some Protoss began to notice the abnormality. The temperature between heaven and earth was rapidly rising. Suddenly, above the sky, there was a sea of fire. The Protoss looked up, and they couldn't help but be shocked. In the sky, huge fireballs began to descend, smashing toward the crowd, covering the sky and the earth. These fireballs completely engulfed the boundless central divine city. The billions of Protoss were too densely packed. A huge fireball smashed down, and it could easily swallow a few Protoss. This was a devastating disaster for the Protoss below. Boom! The fireball descended and smashed into the city wall, creating a huge hole in the flickering golden city wall. Sparks flew everywhere. Some of the Protoss couldn't dodge in time and were caught in the flames. In the blink of an eye, their entire body was set ablaze. They struggled for a short while before they were reduced to ashes. The Protoss army was in chaos. The ancient divine city was engulfed in a sea of fire. "Grandpa High Priest, why don't I beg Wu Huang for mercy?" A little girl looked at the scene in front of her and said with tears in her eyes. The high priest was like a lamp that had run out of oil. His face was ashen, but there was no sign of retreat in his murky eyes. The high priest slammed the staff of dawn on the ground and shouted, "Don't panic, we pros have the protection of the gods. We have many people, and as long as we work together, we will be able to break Wu Huang's vision. Knights of Light, with me as the center, gather." The emperors of the Protoss were also trying their best to control the Protoss army. Under the command of the high priest and some of the Protoss emperors, the Protoss gradually suppressed the fear in their hearts, calmed down, and gathered as much as possible. Suddenly, the color of the sky changed. In addition to the huge fireball, there was also a light blue rain of fire. This kind of fire didn't seem to have any temperature, nor did it have an earth-shattering aura. However, if it landed on a god race cultivator, the god race cultivator would die instantly and turn into ashes with his soul dissipated. The billions of Protoss army had just calmed down when they were baptized by this sky-blue rain of fire. They collapsed again and fell into chaos. The high priest took a deep breath and used the last of his strength to shout, "Everyone, listen to my command. Release your abilities and bloodline visions with me. Attack the sky above us." The high priest's voice was hoarse. Nian Qing lowered her head. She also wanted to take it out earlier, but neither the high priest nor Shen Huang had thought of begging for mercy. They only wanted to fight with Wu Huang and even kill him. She had already taken out this golden paper, but Shen Huang had deliberately provoked her and lured Wu Huang into the land of the gods. Who would have thought that not only would Shen Huang fall, but all the profound gods in the land of the gods would also be buried with him. Chapter 2075. Divine Firmament Immortal Realm, Dajin Immortal Kingdom. Sun Moon County, Astral Sect. It had been more than 1,500 years since Su Zimo went into seclusion. All these years he had never shown his face. Even the area around his cave abode was covered with weeds. They grew so well that they covered the entire cave abode. If not for the faint life aura in the cave abode, many people would have thought that the drunkard had died in there. When he joined the Astral Sect, the changes on the stargazing platform were gradually forgotten. Except for Shangguan Qian of the Shangguan family. Her cave abode was near Su Zimo's cave abode. Every once in a while, she would come here to take a look. This person is really dumb. He's probably drunk in his cave abode and doesn't even know what day it is. Not far away, a young man was lying on a piece of bluestone with his legs crossed as he spoke. Another person said, "If you ask me, it's useless for us to waste time here. Who knows when this drunkard will come out?" Xie Yong, a member of the Xie family. The other person was called Lin Gong, a member of the Lin family. Both of them were first-stage Earth immortals. Back then, Xie Tianfeng and Lin Ming wanted to cause trouble for Su Zimo, but they were stopped by the array outside the cave abode. So they just sent two people to keep an eye on Su Zimo. In the blink of an eye, more than 1,000 years had passed. "This drunkard is really strange," Xie Yong said. Xie Yong said, "Normally, cultivators who join the Astral Sect have a glimmer of hope, hoping to find the legendary cultivation method inheritance in the Astral Sect. But this drunkard has never shown himself. Yeah, he hasn't participated in any of the activities or fights held by the sect," Lin Gong said. "This person hasn't even done any sect missions. Where would he get elemental spirit stones and essence condensing pills to cultivate? I think that even if this drunkard can complete the sect's missions, he'll still exchange them for wine." "Ha!" The two of them laughed. At that moment, a creaking sound came from the cave abode not far away. Xie Yong and Lin Gong were startled and quickly looked in the direction of the voice. The door of the cave that was overgrown with weeds was slowly opening. Dust and smoke were billowing out. Immediately after, a gust of wind surged out from the cave, blowing away the dust at the door. A tall figure swayed as he walked out. It was the drunkard called Mo Ling. This person actually came out of seclusion. Xie Yong let out a long breath. Seeing that this person had come out of seclusion, he could finally return to report the completion of his mission. He no longer needed to keep an eye on him. Brother Xie, something doesn't seem right. Just as Xie Yong was about to leave, Lin Gong suddenly grabbed him and said, "Don't worry." "What is it?" Xie Yong asked impatiently as he was in a hurry to report back. Lin Gong asked, "If I recall correctly, that drunkard was only a first-tier Earth immortal when he joined the astral sect." Xie Yong nodded. Then he realized what Lin Gong was implying. He was shocked and hurriedly asked, "What? Has he broken through to the second level of the Earth origin stage?" To be able to break through one level in 1,500 years, one must be a genius among geniuses. Even some disciples who were specially trained by sects or descendants of aristocratic families would find it difficult to do so with sufficient resources. No, he hasn't broken through to the second level of the Earth origin stage. Lin Gong seemed to be scared out of his wits. He shook his head and said, "Take a look for yourself. My eyes must be playing tricks on me." Xie Yong turned around and used his divine sense to check. Xie Yong's expression changed drastically. Fourth level of the Earth origin stage. In 1,500 years, he had advanced 3 levels. Xie Yong's jaw dropped, his face full of disbelief. Chapter 2077. The black-robed man's expression changed starkly. He had not expected that an unassuming water droplet released by a grade 4 Earth immortal who was 2 cultivation realms lower than him would be able to break through his great mystic power. Not only that, the water droplet that shone with a black light did not dry up after passing through the gigantic fireball. The remaining droplet shot towards the black-robed man. What kind of demonic technique is this? The black-robed man cursed and extended his sleeves. He waved casually, wanting to brush away the water droplet so that he could conjure another immortal art to fight against Su Zimo. However, the moment his sleeves collided with the water droplet, the black-robed man shuddered. He did not manage to shake the water droplet at all. At that moment, it was as though he was not facing a water droplet, but a vast ocean that was surging towards him with raging waves. Bang! The water droplet exploded. The black-robed man was sent flying, and the sound of bones cracking could be heard from his body as he was sent tumbling dozens of feet away. If there was a weak water in the world that could drown all living beings, it was the lightest water in the world. If that was the case, the one heavenly true water would be the heaviest water in the world. A single droplet of water could reach the size of an ocean. Although Su Zimo had successfully cultivated it, he could only conjure a single droplet with his essence spirit. If he could cultivate the one heavenly true water to thousands of droplets, it would be a power that could destroy the world and destroy everything. The black-robed man channeled his essence chi to repair the cracks in his bones as he tried to stand up. All of a sudden, a figure flashed before him, and Su Zimo had already arrived before him. Stepping on his chest with a single foot, it was as though a towering mountain was pressing down on him. The black-robed man could not move at all. "You can't kill me," the black-robed man said hurriedly. "I'm from the Zhou clan." The Zhou clan was one of the 5 major families of Sun Moon County. Su Zimo asked expressionlessly, "Who sent you here?" "It was my idea," the black-robed man replied. "You're not telling the truth." Su Zimo shook his head gently and exerted force with his foot, causing the black-robed man's chest to creak as though he could pierce through it at any moment. "Mo Ling, how dare you?" The black-robed man was enraged. He gritted his teeth and said, "You dare to take my life, my left." Crack! Su Zimo exerted force with his foot and instantly stomped on the black-robed man's heart, causing his chest to cave in deeply. Ah! The black-robed man let out a miserable shriek. Su Zimo did not give him any chance. He extended his palm and slapped the top of his head, imprisoning his essence spirit before releasing the soul-searching technique. Since this person was not telling the truth, Su Zimo would see for himself. It didn't take long for his primordial spirit to wither. After a while, Su Zimo rubbed his palm and destroyed the black-robed man's primordial spirit. Zhuozhu Xian. Su Zimo looked back in the direction of the astral sect and sneered. He had some impression of this Zhuozhu Xian. Among the descendants of the 5 great clans, his cultivation was the highest. Like Shangguan Qian, he was an earth immortal at level 8. He was relatively steady and had an extraordinary bearing. Unlike Xie Tianfeng and Lin Ming, he did not show any hostility towards Su Zimo. Su Zimo did not expect that this person would want his life the moment he made a move. Moreover, this person was extremely cautious. He was afraid that there would be an accident, so he sent a level 6 Earth Immortal to ensure that nothing would go wrong. However, he met Su Zimo. Su Zimo took the black-robed man's storage bag and threw out a ball of fire, burning the man's body to ashes and destroying all traces. Zhuozhu Xuan's eyes were cold as he gritted his teeth. The elderly man frowned and said, "How is that possible? Zhuofu's battle strength is not weak, and his cultivation is 2 levels higher than Mo Ling's. How could he die?" "There are 2 possibilities," Zhuozhu Xian said in a deep voice. "First, Mo Ling relied on that unique treasure to kill Zhuofu. The second possibility is that this person has other helpers. I'm guessing that the first possibility is more likely." The elderly man thought for a while and nodded. He said, "When that person joined the astral sect, he was alone. All these years, he has not come into contact with anyone. He should have no helpers." Zhuozhu Xian suddenly smiled and said, "A treasure that can allow a person to kill an opponent 2 levels higher than him. I'm looking forward to it even more." Chapter 2078. Su Zimo arrived at Blue Feather City and headed straight for the teleportation formation. His wanted poster could still be seen on the city walls of the ancient city. However, more than 1,000 years had passed, and the investigation had gradually relaxed. Su Zimo observed in the city for half a day. Before entering the teleportation formation, there would not be guards coming up to reveal the cultivator's primordial spirit. This way, his primordial spirit would not have any flaws when holding the Tri-Gem Rui scepter. Su Zimo swaggered into the teleportation formation and teleported to the edge of the Sun Moon County's territory. It was the closest city to Dragon Abyss Planet, Peerless City. The longer the teleportation distance, the more elemental spirit stones he would have to pay. There were some elemental spirit stones in the storage bag of the black-robed man, and the amount was enough for him to teleport. After arriving at Peerless City, Su Zimo did not leave the city. Instead, he continued to teleport to Dragon Abyss Planet. Dragon Abyss City did not change much after more than 2,000 years. Su Zimo descended into the ancient city again, and he could not help but feel emotional. Back then, when he left Dragon Abyss City, he was only a Stage 7 Mystic Immortal. When he returned this time, his cultivation had already reached Stage 4 Earthly Immortal. The moment Su Zimo walked out of the teleportation formation, he quickly felt that something was different. This difference came from the gazes of many cultivators in the city. Every cultivator looked at him with a hint of reverence in their eyes. Even the guards guarding the teleportation formation bowed slightly when they saw Su Zimo, revealing a respectful expression. The guards guarding the teleportation formation were only Stage 6 Mystic Immortals. "Who's the city lord of this city?" Su Zimo glanced at the guard beside him and asked casually. "Exalted Immortal, the current city lord of Dragon Abyss City is Chu Ming," the guard said. Su Zimo raised his brows slightly and asked again, "I remember that the previous city lord seemed to have the surname Su." "Exalted Immortal, you're talking about Su Shi, right?" The guard said. After Su Shi became an earthly immortal, he left Dragon Abyss City with his family. He should have joined an immortal sect. Su Zimo nodded slightly. Back then, when he bid farewell to Su Shi, the latter had indeed mentioned such a plan. "Exalted Immortal, you must be here for the Abyss, right?" the guard asked. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat, and he asked in return, "What's wrong? Did other cultivators go to that abyss?" That person said, "Exalted Immortal, you might not know this, but ever since that incident on Dragon Abyss Planet, some exalted immortals from Godly Cloud's continent would come here every once in a while to explore that place." It is said that there is some kind of treasure hidden there, but after all these years, I have not heard of anyone obtaining it. Su Zimo nodded and said, "Did anyone come to the Dragon Abyss planet recently?" There are two sects, the Profound Ice Valley and the Guiyuan sect. I heard that they are both profound rank sects, the person said. What are the cultivators of these sects? Su Zimo asked again. He should be an Earth immortal, but I don't know exactly what level he is at. The guard smiled and said, "There is a huge difference between me and these exalted immortals. I can't tell at all." Su Zimo nodded and took out a jade bottle from his storage bag. He tossed it to the guard and said, "Keep it and pretend that you have never seen me." The guard opened the jade bottle and saw that there were 10,000 small origin condensing pills inside. He could not help but be overjoyed. "Don't worry, exalted immortal." The man happily put the jade bottle into his pouch. There were still many small origin condensing pills in Su Zimo's storage bag.